My name is Mark. I'm 31 years old, and 2 months ago, my life was split into before and after. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon. The sun was just beginning to dip, washing the streets in amber light. I remember glancing at the clock on my dashboard, calculating whether I had time to grab coffee before heading home. That's when it happened. The screech of tires, a horn blaring, and then nothing but chaos. I caught a glimpse of a black SUV racing the yellow light from my left. There was no time to react. The impact hit my side like a hammer to glass. My world spun violently. Metal screamed as my car folded in on itself. My head slammed against the window, shattering it in an explosion of glittering shards. I remember the smell first, gasoline and burnt rubber, followed by the coppery tang of blood in my mouth. My vision swam. Somewhere distant, I heard voices shouting, but it was as though they were underwater. A woman's voice kept repeating, "Stay with me. Stay with me." When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. Tubes snaked into my arm, and the sterile scent of disinfectant burned my nose. My chest ached with every shallow breath. A nurse with kind, tired eyes told me I was lucky, miraculously lucky. The paramedics said it was a wonder I'd survived. The other driver had died instantly. At first, I thought that was the end of my nightmare. But I was wrong. On the second night in the hospital, I woke to find someone sitting in the corner of my room. It was a man, gaunt, pale, dressed in clothing that looked decades old. His eyes were fixed on the window, unmoving. I thought maybe he was another patient who had wandered in. I called out to him, my voice hoarse. He didn't respond. When I pressed the call button, a nurse arrived within seconds. I pointed to the corner, but there was no one there. The nurse gave me a polite, concerned smile and told me it was normal to have strange dreams or hallucinations after trauma. But I hadn't been dreaming. I was awake, and the man was still there when she left, watching the window, silent as stone. That was the moment I realized the accident hadn't just broken my bones. It had broken something else, something I didn't understand, something I couldn't escape. By the third night in the hospital, I knew I wasn't hallucinating. The man in the corner never moved, never blinked, but I could feel his attention shift whenever I looked away, as if he was silently tracking me without turning his head. I avoided his gaze, pretending to sleep. That's when I noticed her. Near the doorway, a woman stood half-hidden in shadow. She had long, damp-looking hair that clung to her pale cheeks, as though she'd just stepped out of a rainstorm. Her hospital gown was torn in places, dark stains blooming across the fabric. I told myself she was just another patient wandering in. But as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I realized her feet weren't touching the ground. A cold ripple ran through me. The nurse came in for my midnight vitals, cheerful as always, and didn't acknowledge either of them. I thought maybe she just hadn't seen them. So I pointed, my voice shaking. "They're right there," I whispered. "The man and the woman." She followed my gesture to the empty corners of the room, frowned gently, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You've been through a lot, Mark. These things can happen." When she left, the room felt heavier. The air was dense, pressing in on me. The woman by the door slowly turned her head toward me. Her eyes, sunken and dark, met mine for the first time. Her lips didn't move, but her voice was inside my head. "You shouldn't be here." A sharp chill gripped my chest. I wanted to speak, to ask what she meant, but I couldn't move. My body was locked, as though invisible hands held me down. The man in the corner finally turned his head. His jaw worked soundlessly, but no words came. I couldn't tell if he was trying to speak or scream. The heart monitor beside my bed began to beep erratically. In that moment, a third figure appeared in the doorway. A boy, no older than 10, his skin ashen, his small frame trembling. He didn't look at me. He only whispered into the empty hallway, over and over. "It's still hungry. It's still hungry. It's still hungry." I shut my eyes, hoping the darkness would make them vanish. When I opened them again, they were gone. But the echo of that whisper stayed with me. They released me from the hospital after 2 weeks. Physically, I was recovering. My ribs still ached, and my left leg throbbed when I walked. But the doctors were satisfied enough to send me home. I wasn't. Every night before discharge, I'd woken to see more of them. Not just the man, the woman, and the boy. others too. Some I only caught in the reflection of the darkened window, standing behind me. Others drifted past the open doorway, gliding rather than walking, their faces blurred like a badly tuned channel. But none of the nurses saw them. Not a single visitor reacted. The living were blind to them. When the orderly wheeled me toward the exit, I kept my gaze low, afraid of catching one of their eyes. Even so, I saw a figure at the far end of the corridor, a woman with twisted, broken legs, dragging herself forward on her elbows. The sound, wet, scraping, rhythmic, made my stomach twist. No one else reacted. Outside, the crisp air felt unreal, almost too clean after the hospital's recycled breath. I thought maybe, just maybe, the open sky would keep them away. It didn't. By the time the taxi pulled up to my apartment building, I'd already seen two of them. One sat hunched on a bench outside the ER entrance, face buried in its hands. Another stood in the hospital parking lot, staring up at the clouds, as if trying to remember what they were. The driver helped me with my small duffel bag. He was chatty, telling me about the weather, the traffic, the rising cost of gas. I nodded along, my eyes fixed on the apartment entrance. Someone was standing in the lobby. No, something. It was tall, thin to the point of deformity, its head brushing the ceiling. Its arms hung almost to the floor, hands slack, fingers splayed. The face was wrong, stretched, smooth, as if someone had erased its features. It didn't move as we approached. The driver didn't notice it at all. I swallowed hard and pushed through the glass door, brushing past where its body should have been. The air was colder there, so cold I could see my breath. When I reached the elevator and turned back, it was gone. I thought I'd feel relief. My apartment had never felt this quiet. Usually, the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of the pipes, and the faint traffic noise outside made the place feel alive. Now, every sound was swallowed by a thick, heavy stillness. I set my duffel bag down in the living room and lowered myself onto the couch. My ribs protested, and I pressed a palm on my side. The doctor's words replayed in my head. Full recovery in a few months, but they didn't know about this. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper than I remembered. The light from the street lamp outside painted long, warped shapes across the carpet, shapes that shifted just enough to make me question if they were moving. I made myself some tea. It felt absurd, boiling water while wondering if something was standing right behind me, but the act was grounding. Normal. I carried the mug to my bedroom, trying not to glance into the hallway mirror. I failed. In the reflection, someone stood in my kitchen. A woman, hair covering most of her face, head slightly tilted, as though listening to something I couldn't hear. Her skin was too pale, the bones beneath stretching unnaturally against it. I turned around, and the kitchen was empty. The tea didn't taste right after that. I left the mug on my nightstand and tried to sleep, curling onto my uninjured side. The sheets were cool against my skin, the familiar smell of detergent a small comfort. My eyes were just starting to close when the mattress dipped. Someone was sitting on the edge of the bed. I froze, breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I turned my head. It was her, the same woman from the hospital doorway. Damp hair, empty eyes, lips that moved without sound. I could see the faint rise and fall of her chest, but it was wrong, uneven, like she had to remind herself to breathe. Her whisper came again, thin and cold, sinking straight into my bones. "You don't belong here." My body refused to move. My pulse roared in my ears. She leaned closer, her hair brushing my cheek, and I caught the faint smell of soil and something sweet rotting underneath. Then from the hallway, another voice, the boy's, soft and rhythmic. "It's still hungry. It's still hungry." The woman's head snapped up, her gaze fixed toward the sound. And just like that, she was gone. But the mattress still bore the weight of where she'd been sitting. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat upright in bed, lights on, staring at the empty corner where she'd vanished. Every few minutes, I'd hear faint creaks from the hallway, as if someone was walking back and forth just out of sight. By morning, exhaustion had me feeling drunk. I needed answers, any answers, so I did what most desperate people do. I turned to the internet. I typed "see ghosts after accident" into the search bar. Hundreds of results appeared, Forums, paranormal blogs, amateur videos of flickering shadows. Some stories felt eerily familiar. Survivors of car accidents claiming they saw others afterward. Some called them the left behind. Others used the name echoes. But one phrase kept reappearing in different threads: the false ones. According to the posts, the false ones weren't traditional ghosts. They weren't here to warn anyone or deliver messages. They were hungry, not for food, but for life. Some claimed the false ones came from people who died at the same moment you should have died. That something about surviving your appointed death left you open to them. That was enough to make my stomach clench. One comment stopped me cold. If they speak to you, you're marked. If you hear about the hunger, it means the feeder has found you. I shut the laptop, my hands trembling. That's when I realized the TV in the corner of the room was on. I never turned it on. The screen was nothing but static, but beneath the hiss, a voice was whispering my name, over and over. Mark, Mark, Mark. I stepped toward it, heart pounding. The whisper grew clearer, not louder, but sharper, like it was sliding into my skull. And then it changed. It's hungry for you. The static flashed, and for less than a second, I saw a face, stretched, eyeless, a mouth far too wide. I yanked the plug from the wall. The whisper stopped instantly. But in the blank reflection of the black screen, I wasn't alone. Something was standing right behind me. I didn't turn around. Every instinct screamed that if I looked, I'd see something I could never unsee, and that it would change me in ways I couldn't undo. My breath fogged the dark TV screen, but the reflection behind me didn't breathe. It just stood there, tall and impossibly still. Slowly, almost deliberately, a hand rose into view. The fingers were too long, the joints bending in ways that made my stomach twist. They hovered an inch from my shoulder. I bolted. The hallway light flickered as I ran past, grabbing my jacket and phone without stopping. I slammed the front door behind me, not caring if the neighbors thought I was losing my mind. The cool air outside was a shock, but it didn't help, because it was already there. The thing, the feeder, stood across the street. It was worse in full view. A gaunt frame, its skin stretched too thin, like wet paper over bone. Its head tilted in a way that suggested curiosity, not aggression. Yet I felt hunted. No eyes, just smooth, pale skin where they should have been. And that mouth, I couldn't stop staring. It hung slightly open, the jaw unhinged wider than humanly possible, revealing rows of teeth that seemed to shift like they were alive. It didn't walk toward me. It slid. The space between us shrank, but its body barely moved. I stepped back, but my heel hit the curb. My chest was tight, and my vision tunneled. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered what that online post had said. If you hear about the hunger, it means the feeder has found you. It stopped a few feet away. I could feel it, a cold so deep it ached in my bones. The mouth stretched wider, impossibly wide now, until the lower jaw nearly brushed its chest. The air smelled like damp soil and rust. It leaned in. The skin where its eyes should have been was so close I could have touched it. Its mouth didn't move, but the voice, deep, rasping, and layered with whispers, filled my head. You owe me your breath. I stumbled back, gasping for air that suddenly felt too heavy to inhale. My vision darkened, and I thought I was about to collapse when a shout rang out. Hey! A man across the street was waving at me, concerned. The feeder's head snapped toward him, and in a blink, it was gone. The man crossed over, asking if I was okay. I nodded, lying through my teeth. But in my gut, I knew the truth. It had found me, and next time, there might not be a witness to interrupt it. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. It was a weak lie, but it was the only way I could make it through breakfast without shaking. I forced myself to leave the apartment. Crowds, sunlight, noise. I told myself those things would keep me safe. There was no way something like that could follow me into the middle of the city. By midday, I was sitting in a small cafe, sipping coffee and watching strangers pass by the rain-speckled windows. It felt almost normal. My shoulders began to relax. That's when the reflection in the glass moved. It wasn't mine. Over my shoulder, just beyond the line of tables, stood the feeder. It didn't belong here. The fluorescent lights seemed to bend away from it, its presence like a hole in reality. Nobody else looked at it. I turned quickly, and it was gone. My coffee tasted bitter in my mouth. I paid the bill in cash and left, walking faster than I should have with my healing leg. Every shop window became a threat. Every shiny surface another chance to see it. And I did. 3 times. In the reflection of a car door. In the glass of a bus shelter. In the chrome side of a trash bin. Always behind me. Always closer. By the time I reached the pharmacy, I was sweating despite the cold. I ducked inside, pretending to browse. My hands trembled as I picked up a box of painkillers I didn't need. That's when the boy from the hospital appeared in the aisle. Same as before. Ash-pale skin, trembling shoulders, eyes that wouldn't meet mine. His lips moved in that same, endless whisper. It's still hungry. It's still hungry. I stepped back, knocking a display of cough syrup to the floor. Bottles clattered and rolled across the tiles. A few customers glanced over, but none of them saw the boy. And then I felt it, a breath on the back of my neck. Cold, heavy, familiar. I didn't turn around. I bolted for the door, the chime above it shrieking as I shoved through. Out on the street, the crowd swallowed me, but my heart wouldn't slow. Because I finally understood. It didn't matter where I went. The feeder could follow me anywhere. That night, I couldn't bring myself to turn off the lights. I sat at my desk with my laptop open, the blue glow making my skin look corpse pale. If the forums were right, there had to be others, people who'd survived the same kind of accident, who'd seen what I'd seen. I started by searching for news articles about the crash. Most were short, sterile summaries. 1 dead, 3 injured. My name was there, buried in the list of survivors. But there were 2 other names. I found the first one, a woman named Elaine, on social media. Her profile picture was dated, but the most recent post was only a week old. If anyone else sees them, message me. It's getting worse. My pulse quickened. The second survivor, a man named Carl, didn't have much online, just a single forum thread on a ghost hunting site. His only post read, "They won't leave me alone. The tall one's mouth keeps getting bigger. I can't sleep." It was dated 3 days before the post stopped abruptly. I messaged both of them, explaining what I'd been seeing. Elaine responded almost instantly. "We need to meet. It's the only way to talk safely." We agreed to meet at a 24-hour diner near the edge of the city. When I got there, Elaine was already in a booth, hunched over a cup of coffee. She looked older than her profile picture, eyes ringed with deep shadows. As I slid into the seat opposite her, she gave a nervous glance toward the windows before speaking. "You've seen the feeder, haven't you?" she asked. I didn't bother denying it. She leaned in. "It feeds on the life you stole when you didn't die. Every breath you take, it wants back, and it will wait as long as it needs to. But there's a way to break the connection." I gripped the edge of the table. "Ow!" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You have to give it something else. Something alive." Before I could react, her gaze shifted over my shoulder. Her face drained of color. I turned. The feeder was standing just outside the diner window, its eyeless face pressed to the glass, mouth slowly widening. Elaine's hand closed around mine, her grip ice cold. "You don't have much time left." Elaine didn't blink. Her eyes stayed locked on the feeder outside, her grip on my hand so tight it hurt. "It doesn't care what it takes," she said, voice trembling but steady. "A bird, a dog, a person, it just wants a soul. Something alive. If it gets that, it leaves you alone." My stomach turned. "You're saying kill something?" Her gaze finally broke from the glass, snapping to me. "I'm saying choose. Because if you don't, it will. And it won't pick you first." The feeder's head tilted against the window, that mouth stretching, bones in the jaw popping audibly even through the glass. A faint, muffled whisper crawled into my ears. Breath for breath. Elaine pulled a crumpled photo from her coat pocket and slid it across the table. It showed a man I didn't recognize, middle-aged, grinning awkwardly. "That was my husband," she said flatly. "It took him instead of me. I gave it to him." The air between us felt heavier, colder. "You're insane," I muttered, shoving the photo back. She leaned forward, her breath smelling faintly of stale coffee. "You think I wanted to? You think I could have lived like that, with it following me everywhere, waiting for me to fall asleep, waiting for me to slip?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The feeder moved away from the window, disappearing into the night like smoke. Elaine's shoulders sagged with relief. "You need to decide soon," she said, standing, "before it decides for you." She left without looking back, the little bell above the door jingling faintly. I sat there in the diner's harsh fluorescent light, my coffee long gone cold, my mind replaying her words over and over. Something alive. On the walk home, I felt it behind me. Not close enough to see, but there. The air tasted metallic. My shadow stretched longer than it should have, bending in ways the streetlights couldn't explain. And for the first time, I caught myself wondering who I could live without. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days. The curtains stayed drawn, every light on. I tried to eat, to distract myself with TV, but the static always seemed a little too loud, the shadows a little too deep. It didn't show itself at first. It didn't need to. I could feel it, pacing in the hall outside my door, sliding its long fingers over the walls. Sometimes in the dead hours of the night, I heard it breathing through the keyhole. By the third night, I'd made my choice. I hated myself for it, but fear is louder than morality. Elaine had been right. If I didn't give it something, it would take everything. I thought about my neighbor, Mrs. Keegan. She was kind, but frail, living alone with no family nearby. 92 years old, always leaving her door unlocked. I told myself it would be painless, that she'd just stop existing. I waited until the building was quiet, then stepped into the hallway. The air felt thick, hard to breathe. Every shadow seemed to shiver. I knocked on her door, already rehearsing some excuse about needing help. No answer. I turned the handle. It opened. She was asleep in her recliner, the TV throwing flickering light over her face. I stepped inside and froze. It was already there. The feeder stood behind her chair, bent low, its gaping mouth inches from the crown of her head. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Its eyeless face turned toward me, and in that instant, I understood it hadn't been waiting for my offering. It had chosen its own. The air rushed out of my lungs, and I dropped to my knees, unable to breathe. Mrs. Keegan's head tilted back slightly, her chest rising and falling slower, until it stopped. The feeder straightened, its jaw closing with a sickening click. For a moment, it loomed over me. The cold pouring off, it was unbearable. Then it leaned close, whispering in a voice like wind through dead leaves. Debt paid, and it was gone. I stumbled back to my apartment, my legs shaking so hard I nearly fell. The silence that followed was worse than any haunting. Because I knew it was true. I was free, and I knew exactly what it had cost.